Those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable.
Revolution.
First, what is a revolution?
Revolution is the solution, hey.
The motive of a revolution.
Well, nah.
The objective of a revolution.
Be televised.
And the result of a revolution. And the methods used in a revolution.
I know you know. Put my gun away. Never gonna put my gun away. Put my gun away. See them all, be better run away.
This generation of Americans has already had enough, more than enough, of war and hate and oppression.
Hello, Internet. How is everybody this lovely Sunday evening? It has been a eventful 24 hours, hasn't it? I got a lot of opinions on this, but I'm going to keep them to myself until we get further into the episode because we got a lot to cover. And I want to go over everything that's happened, everything that's being said, and then I'll give my 2 cents, even though many of you guys already know where I stand on this issue. So I hope everybody's doing well. I hope everybody's having a good weekend. I apologize I wasn't here last week. I didn't have internet again. I'm working on getting Comcast out here, but it's a nightmare. They don't want to run fiber into our little complex here. So yeah, yesterday I went for a 10-mile run in Santa Cruz and got sunburnt. And I was having such a good day. I avoided the internet, social media all morning. I got a new old Mercedes that I picked up for $2,300, old 1990 E300, and it's freaking awesome, and I love it, and it's in amazing condition. And I drove it down to Santa Cruz, and it's got a new stereo in it, so I was playing some tunes the whole way there. Went for a little cruise, stopped, went for a run from down the levee all the way to Natural Bridges and back. It was great. I was feeling wonderful. Drove it all the way home through the redwoods. Again, the music playing. Having a nice, great Saturday. Get home. Learned that we decided to drop bombs on the Iranian nuclear facility. And immediately I didn't feel nice anymore. I should have just stayed off the internet. Sometimes ignorance really is bliss. I mean, if I didn't pay attention to all this crap, wouldn't I be happier? Sometimes I ask myself, should I just stop paying attention to all this stuff? Anywho, I hope you guys are doing well. We got a lot to get into, so let's get right into it. Let's see. Let me check the chat here. Hope you guys. Oh, Danger, Terry Wallace. Always good to see you, Bob Tiergarten. I'm glad you haven't unfollowed me, Terry. I see you've been unfollowing some people. And I know I probably share some of the opinions of the people you've been unfollowing, but we're friends. We're friends, so you can't unfollow me. And I like you too much. So, yeah, if you guys disagree with me, drop it in the chat. Try to not yell at me and call me retarded. You can if you want, though. I'll still respond to what you're saying. All right, let's get right into it, shall we? So we got what Donald Trump shared on Truth Social, and that's the first thing I saw when I opened up the good old X platform yesterday when I got home from my run. And this is what he had to say. He had to say, sorry, I want to get the screens right there. Bob Tiergarten, I see if I didn't say that already. It's like 95 here, and I barely slept this weekend. Yeah, it's been beautiful here, but if it was like 78 degrees when I was running yesterday, and if that was like, you see the thing about them over in England having an absolute meltdown because they're going to have a 78-degree heat wave, they would freaking melt out here. They would absolutely die. All right, so yesterday evening at about 4:50 p.m. Pacific time, Donald Trump dropped this on the X platform, probably earlier because it was screenshotted from Truth Social. He says, we have completed a very successful attack on the 3 nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. All planes are now outside of Iran airspace. A full payload of bombs was dropped on the primary site, Fordow. All planes are safely on their way home. Congratulations to the great American warriors. There is not another military in the world that could have done this. Now it's time for peace. Thank you for your attention to this matter. We bombed your country. Now it's time for peace. Oh, it was interesting. Terry, I only unfollowed a few. The ones that went absolutely ape stupid, I don't unfollow for disagreeing. Yeah, I go kind of ape stupid sometimes. So just hanging there with me. So that was the news from Trump, and this was following the negotiations that were supposed to happen around the nuclear deal. And before he said this, he said, we're going to hold off for 2 weeks. We're going to hold off for 2 weeks, you guys, and we're not going to jump into anything. And that appeared to be a ruse, much like Israel's initial strikes appeared to be, first we came out and said we had nothing to do with it. And either way, it would have looked bad because we said we had nothing to do with it. And then we said, actually, we did. We helped, in whatever ways. It was Israel's strike, but we knew about it apparently. So then, they decided, they said they were going to have more peace talks in terms of getting Iran to not enrich uranium to 60% and all that good stuff. And then they said they're going to wait 2 weeks. And that was like 2 days before this. And then boom, Saturday, we dropped bombs on this facility. And the effect of those bombs is being highly debated. But after Trump put out this post on Truth Social, he did a brief press conference, probably the most brief press conference he's ever done, with Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth, and JD Vance standing behind him. And we're going to play that whole thing. We'll just react to it because it wasn't very long. If you guys haven't seen it, we'll watch it now.
Thank you very much. A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success.
That may not exactly be accurate. I mean, a success, depends on how you define success, would be, in their minds, that the facilities were completely destroyed, right? Which would render them useless. Okay, we'll see if that's true.
Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier. For 40 years, Iran has been saying death to America, death to Israel. They have been killing our people, blowing off their arms, blowing off their legs with roadside bombs. That was their specialty. We lost over 1,000 people, and hundreds of thousands throughout the Middle East and around the world have died as a direct result of their hate. In particular, so many were killed by their general, Qasem Soleimani. I decided a long time ago that I would not let this happen. It will not continue. I want to thank and congratulate Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. We worked as a team like perhaps no team has ever worked before. And we've gone a long way to erasing this horrible threat to Israel. I want to thank the Israeli military.
Notice how he says horrible threat to Israel, and he doesn't say horrible threat to America.
For the wonderful job they've done. And most importantly, I want to congratulate the great American patriots who flew those magnificent machines tonight, and all of the United States military on an operation the likes of which the world has not seen in many, many decades. Hopefully, we will no longer need their services in this capacity. I hope that's so. I also want to congratulate the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Raisin-Kane, spectacular general, and all of the brilliant military minds involved in this attack. With all of that being said, this cannot continue. There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left. Tonight's was the most difficult of them all, by far, and perhaps the most lethal. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill. Most of them can be taken out in a matter of minutes. There's no military in the world that could have done what we did tonight, not even close. There has never been a military that could do what took place just a little while ago. Tomorrow, General Kane, Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth will have a press conference at 8 a.m. at the Pentagon. And I want to just thank everybody, and in particular, God. I want to just say, we love you, God, and we love our great military. Protect them. God bless the Middle East. God bless Israel, and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. So I want to pose a question, but I'll wait until this next clip that we get through. Maestro of Light, good to see you. Alon's probably right. Epstein got some dope, got some tape on him doing something naughty. Yeah, a lot of people like to defend the like Trump, didn't have a relationship with Epstein. They just knew each other in passing. If you read Whitney Webb's books, that isn't exactly true. They were a lot closer than people like to think, but we won't get into the Epstein side of that for now. So let's keep going. So Trump claims that we destroyed those facilities, right? And I want to also say that they weren't making nuclear weapons at these facilities. Tulsi Gabbard reported that. DNI saying our own intelligence is saying that they're not making nuclear weapons. They have no intention of making nuclear weapons. Enriching uranium up to 60%, which is below that nuclear treaty that everybody signed. And it's the way Scott Porton puts it, is it's a latent threat. So if you enrich uranium up to a certain point, it's not that hard to get the rest of the way. And if you needed to ramp up to build a nuclear weapon in a short period of time, that's where you'd want to enrich uranium too. Well, as close to that treaty allows. So they were technically doing everything. I mean, according to all intelligence and all reports and what people are saying, they weren't enriching uranium past the point that they were allowed to, and they had no intention of building a nuclear weapon. So if these facilities weren't destroyed and they weren't breaking any laws and we decided to bomb them anyway, do you think that makes it more or less likely that Iran's going to go full balls to the wall in terms of creating a nuclear weapon now? I would argue that this actually makes it more likely that Iran is going to obtain a nuclear weapon sooner than they would have if we would have just left them the fuck alone. And I'll also say that I heard the same rhetoric growing up about North Korea. North Korea cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. Then once they got one, everybody kind of stopped talking about that. And the whole rhetoric that Iran can't be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. Okay. What does that mean? Because I would say that Iran, we need to do everything within reason to keep Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. Because if they are just, we can't allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon, okay, where do you draw that line? And I know it's hard for some people to conceptualize a hypothetical, but let's play a hypothetical scenario. Let's say China or Russia decides, hey, we're going to give you a nuclear weapon. And we found out about it before Russia or China was going to do that. Would we say to Russia or China, if you give Iran a nuclear weapon, we're going to go to war with you? Would we do that? Are we willing to go that far? So I guess my argument here is, if we draw a line in the sand saying Iran cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapon, okay, how far are we willing to go to keep Iran from having a nuclear weapon? Are you willing to start nuclear war in order to keep Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon? The whole argument to me seems ridiculous and silly. So we'll keep going. Let's go back to if we think that the facilities were actually destroyed. So we're going to go over to Jack Posobiec here, and he was interviewing I don't know who this guy is. I apologize. I should have got his name before I started. So we'll just go over to this video. And this is Jack Posobiec talking about the Fordo facility, which a lot of pictures are going around right now showing a lot of people are arguing that it wasn't that damaged. I don't know. I can't tell from satellite photos, but let's listen to somebody smarter than me talk about it. Bob Tiergarten, there will be peace in the Middle East when every Jew and every Muslim convert to Christianity. Spicy take. Danger, she said that back in March, but just in the past couple weeks, the two nuclear watch groups found a secret facility. Right. More, they got weapons of mass destruction, right? Like, bro, I'm not believing any of this shit. Now this could be bullshit information, just like they told us. Oh, okay, we're on the same page there. Danger. All right, let's watch this video from Human Events, and it's regarding whether the facility was destroyed or not.
Is this true that this, you can just press one button and get rid of Iran's uranium enrichment site? Or potentially, is there some magical thinking going on here?
Well, it's magical thinking, Jack. I mean, you and I have both, you did targeting packages. I had inputs to targeting packages. I've been a planner, military planner, where we have to look at the range of things regarding a campaign, everything from kinetic strikes to special operations force options. And this is the deal regarding Corridor. You would have to have a strike package of 10 B-2 Spirit bombers coming in, one after the other, within about 3 minutes, dropping the ordnance. So these are penetrators, but Jack, to get to the level we're talking, you're going to have 10, count them, 10 of those penetrators get deep enough to have an effect. That's how deep this thing is. So, and then, oh, by the way, what happens if we have to go in and verify we did the job we said we did? Oh, by the way, what happens to the radiation that comes spewing out once you penetrate the facility? So General Tony Zinni, the commander of Central Command, one of my friends and mentors, told me that Bill Clinton, this is back in the 90s, Bill Clinton would ask him, hey, General Zinni, can you do X? Can you defeat X? And Zinni would say, yeah, I can do that, but then what? So I think, Jack, as much as we can talk about ordnance, we can talk about effects, nobody can actually define what our end state is or what would happen if we do this. The then what seems to be the piece that everybody is missing, and I think President Trump has got it. That's why he's taken a deep breath and thinking about this before we act.
Well, so he doesn't seem to be too convinced that we actually destroyed those facilities. All right, let's keep going here. I got a lot to get through, so I need to go quicker. So this is from, this is just a post. This is I'm not sure. Let's see what article this was from. Okay, so a guy named David E. Sanger, I don't know what organization he's from, says U.S. officials concede they don't know the whereabouts of Iran's stockpile of near bomb-grade uranium, the 60% enriched uranium. So they destroyed the sites, allegedly, but they still don't know where the uranium is. And if that's the case, did we really stop Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon or slow them? Or do we actually speed up that process? Because now Iran's just going to be like, fuck it, they're going to bomb us anyway. Let's make a nuke. I would argue that our strikes against Iran are actually going to increase the likelihood that Iran's going to get a nuclear weapon, and it's going to speed up that process. That's what I think. Could be wrong. Hope I am. I hope everybody's calling me a retard. I hope I'm wrong about all this stuff. We'll keep going. So this is from a press briefing from the Pentagon earlier today, and I want to play a little bit about it. So it's just it's kind of boring, but it's also important stuff. Yeah, let's go over to the Pentagon and see what they had to say about this whole thing.
Saturday morning, a large B-2 strike package comprised of bombers launched from the continental United States. As part of a plan to maintain tactical surprise, part of the package proceeded to the west and into the Pacific as a decoy, a deception effort known only to an extremely small number of planners and key leaders here in Washington and in Tampa. The main strike package, comprised of 7 B-2 Spirit bombers, each with 2 crew members, proceeded quietly to the east with minimal communications. Throughout the 18-hour flight into the target area, the aircraft completed multiple in-flight refuelings. Once over land, the B-2s linked up with escort and support aircraft in a complex, tightly timed maneuver requiring exact synchronization across multiple platforms in a narrow piece of airspace, all done with minimal communications. This type of integration is exactly what our joint force does better than anyone else in the world. At approximately 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time last night, and just prior to the strike package entering Iran, a U.S. submarine in the Central Command Area of Responsibility launched more than 24 Tomahawk land attack cruise missiles against key surface infrastructure targets at Esfahan. As the Operation Midnight Hammer strike package entered Iranian airspace, the U.S. employed several deception tactics, including decoys, as the fourth and fifth generation aircraft pushed out in front of the strike package at high altitude and high speed, sweeping in front of the package for enemy fighters and surface-to-air missile threats. The strike package was supported by U.S. Strategic Command, U.S. Transportation Command, U.S. Cyber Command, U.S. Space Command, U.S. Space Force, and U.S. European Command. As the strike package approached Fordo and Natanz, the U.S. protection package employed high-speed suppression weapons to ensure safe passage of the strike package, with fighter assets employing preemptive suppressing fires against any potential Iranian surface-to-air threats. We are currently unaware.
Just a quick side note: does this whole operation sound a little similar to the plot of the most recent Top Gun movie? Just throwing that out there. Predictive programming.
Aware of any shots fired at the U.S. strike package on the way in. At approximately 6:40 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2:10 a.m. Iran time, the lead B-2 dropped two GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator weapons on the first of several aim points at Fordo. As the president stated last night, the remaining bombers then hit their targets as well, with a total of 14 MOPs dropped against two nuclear target areas. All three Iranian nuclear infrastructure targets were struck between 6:40 p.m. and 7:05 p.m. Eastern time. Again, that's about 2:10 in the morning local time in Iran, with the Tomahawk missiles being the last to strike at Esfahan to ensure we retain the element of surprise throughout the operation. Following weapons release, the Midnight Hammer strike package exited Iranian airspace and the package began its return home. We are unaware of any shots fired.
I'll give you guys a Midnight Hammer strike package.
Into Saturday.
All right, Wally, good to see you. Catching up from the beginning at 2x speed. Do I talk really fast 2x speed? I can't do the, like when Tim Pool tries to talk all fast. I can't do that. I just end up sounding funny. All right, let's keep going here. Operation Midnight Hammer. Why do they make it sound so sexual? Is that are you an Iranian nuclear facility? Because I'm about to bust your bunker. All right, let's keep going. This is from crazy ass Mark Levine. He says he's quote tweeting open source intel, and he says America needs to stand with POTUS and Israel by staggering large numbers. America stands with POTUS and Israel by staggering large numbers. Nearly 70% of U.S. airstrikes to stop. Nearly 70% of U.S. airstrikes to stop Iran's nuclear ambitions. I think he meant to say nearly 70% of people support. So he goes to a CNN poll. It's so funny because, all of like the worst people are now cheering for this war. Mark Levin, Mike Pompeo, John Bolton, Lindsey Graham, all sorts of people that are just like the worst neocons out there are all super cheering for it. And then what do? They go to a CNN poll show everybody's actually in support of this war. Well, let's listen to how they actually, the question they asked people for supporting this poll.
And overall, I feel like there's more support for Donald Trump's positions than is comically acknowledged. Oppose Iran getting a nuclear weapon.
CNN, they're praising Trump now. He's going to war. It's like everybody's on page when it comes to going to war.
I mean, look at this. 79% of adults agree on that. They agree with Donald Trump. Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon.
So that's the question that they asked. Do you want Iran to get a nuclear weapon? Do you oppose? So they could have asked it the same way. They asked the question, do you oppose Iran getting a nuclear weapon? They could have also asked, do you support Iran getting a nuclear weapon? Same question, right? Yeah, 79% of, I would say I oppose Iran getting a nuclear weapon. However, I'm not willing to start a nuclear war over it. So, like, they're using this poll to show, like, see, 79% of Americans agree with Trump bombing Iranian nuclear facilities. No, that's not what this poll is showing at all. It's
83% of Republicans, 79% of independents, 79% of Democrats. When you get 79% of Democrats and 83% of Republicans agreeing on anything, you know that that position is the very clear majority in this country. And so the American public is with Donald Trump. They definitely oppose Iran getting nuclear weapons.
So this is a nuance here, but Trump and Netanyahu both arguing that Iran is close to being capable of making a nuclear weapon. If that
And Netanyahu's been saying that for 25, 30 years now, but they're only days away, even though the most recent thing he said about that was they're about a year away.
that is the case, what is the feeling of Americans as to whether the United States should get involved in this conflict?
Right. If you buy Donald Trump's theory of the case, and I think that's important to note, this is polling from April. For Vance trying to make a nuclear weapon, look at this. Overall, you get the slight plurality. I mean, it's within the margin of error, but the slight plurality of Americans actually favor U.S. airstrikes compared to 47% opposing it. Now, here's the other nugget I'll note, right? There's been a lot of talk online and on social media and in podcasts of a divide within the Republican ranks. But here on this question, if Iran's trying to make a nuclear weapon, look at that. 69% of Republicans, the clear vast majority of Republicans, favor U.S. airstrikes on Iran, on their nuclear facilities. But there is this substantial minority, 20.
See, neocons have infiltrated MAGA. They are still the dominant people in the GOP. 69% of people support airstrikes against Iran. They didn't even clarify when they said airstrikes against Iran. They didn't say airstrikes against nuclear facilities. They just said airstrikes. Just go bomb the shit out of them, guys. It'll be fine. It'll fix everything. That'll stop them from getting a nuclear weapon.
27% who oppose such an idea. So it's not surprising you're hearing those other voices besides Donald Trump out there. There are plenty of them in the Republican ranks who oppose the U.S. striking Iran if they're trying to make a nuclear weapon. But the clear majority of Republicans are with Donald Trump if, in fact, Iran is trying to make nuclear weapons. They do, in fact, potentially favor U.S. airstrikes.
Okie dokie. Danger. Operation Midnight Hammer sounds like something Ron Jeremy would star in. Yeah, it does. It definitely does. All right, let's keep going here. This is from Benny Johnson. It was actually from Meet the Press with MSNBC and them talking to J.D. Vance. Benny Johnson says, Vice President J.D. Vance makes it clear the U.S. is not at war with Iran. Does he, Benny? Does he make it clear that we're not at war? Thanks for clarifying that for me. Let's see what J.D. Vance had to say.
Is the United States now at war with Iran?
No, Kristen, we're not at war with Iran.
Oh.
We're at war with Iran's nuclear program.
Oh, we're not at war with Iran. We're only at war with their nuclear program, you guys. Fuck. I was so confused.
And let me just say, Kristen, that we're incredibly grateful and proud of the American Air Force pilots who did an incredible job last night. The operation was really extraordinary. These guys flew from Missouri. They didn't land a single time. They dropped 30,000-pound bombs on a target the size of a washing machine, and then got back home safely without ever landing in the Middle East or ever stopping other than to briefly refuel. And of course, they did that in the air. So it's really an incredible operation, a testament to the power of American military. And I think what shows what can happen when you have that great American military in the hands of capable presidential leadership. What we did is we destroyed the Iranian nuclear program. I think we set that program back substantially, and we did it without endangering the lives of the American pilots. That's an incredible thing, and I think we all should be proud. Whatever our politics, we should be proud of what these guys accomplished. A very, very high impact mission under a lot of pressure.
Proud, guys. Bombed Iran. You should be proud. Renhen, thank you very much for reposting that. And that reminds me, if you guys are watching over on X, on YouTube, Rumble, whatever, give that like button a tap, repost, share, subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. It's what helps me grow. I don't make any money off this. I do it just for fun. Maybe someday I will. So if you guys want to repost it, it would be gratefully, I would be very grateful, and it would help the show grow. So thank you for being here and thank you for watching. Okay, let's keep going. I sort of have no words of what you just said. We're not at war with Iran. We're just at war with their nuclear capabilities. Like, okay, all right. Like, if you say so, let's keep going. We got another JD Vance clip I want to play for you guys. Let's go over to Megatron. Just in JD Vance. I don't understand. I understand that. Well, he quoted the episode, so I'll just play it.
I certainly empathize with Americans who are exhausted after 25 years of foreign entanglements in the Middle East. I understand the concern, but the difference is that back then we had dumb presidents, and now we have a president who actually knows how to accomplish America's national security objectives. So this is not going to be some long, drawn-out thing. We've got in. We've done the job of setting their nuclear program back. We're going to now work to permanently dismantle that nuclear program over the coming years, and that is.
Do you notice what he admitted to there? We set their nuclear program back. Now we're going to work over the next couple of years to completely dismantle it. Wait, hold on. I thought you just said you don't want long, drawn-out wars. What do you mean? Like, why? How exactly are we going to work to completely dismantle it over the next few years? Does that mean more strikes? Does it mean regime change? Does it mean boots on the ground, JD? What are you saying here?
The president has set out to do. Simple principle. Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. That has animated American policy over the past 130 days. It's going to continue to be a driving force of our policy in the Middle East for the next 3.5 years.
Again, they can't have a nuclear weapon. Okay. How far are you willing to go? What if Russia or China says, we're going to give you a nuclear weapon because we're pissed at what the U.S. just did? Are we going to tell Russia or China, we are going to bomb you with nuclear weapons if you give them a nuclear weapon? Are you willing to go that far? No, you're not. Then you're not saying that Iran cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. You're saying that we should try to stop Iran from having a nuclear weapon up into a certain line. So where's the line? Where is it? It's obviously not bombing their nuclear facilities. Okay, let's keep going. Let's go over to Thomas Massie here on Face the Nation because Trump is upset with Massie. He's going to start a pack against him and try to get him primaried in the midterms. Isn't that fun? Isn't that fun, everybody? Because, I mean, I'm sorry, but Massie is more America first than Donald Trump ever was, if you ask me. A lot of people are mad because I'm talking shit about Trump right now. I'm anti-war first and foremost. And the primary reason I voted for Trump was no new wars. And he had a track record demonstrating that. Yeah, there was still the ongoing stuff in Yemen. He sort of bombed Soleimani. He lit up one of the tarmacs or one of the runways in Syria, but he didn't actually start a new forever war. First president in a long time to not do that. So we'll keep going. Thomas Massie, Face the Nation. Let's see what he had to say here.
What he promised us was we would put America first. And I think there are still voices in this administration. You've still got J.D. Vance. You've still got Tulsi Gabbard. You still RFK Jr. You still got calmer heads that could prevail.
They were not persuasive in this case, clearly.
Well, somebody was persuasive. AIPAC is very persuasive. For instance, the Israeli lobby in Congress. If you look at my colleagues' feeds now, they all look the same. They're all tweeting the same message that we've got to support Israel and we've got to do this. What?
Interesting, isn't it? Got another Massie clip that I want to play. This is him on CNN now. I guess we're fans of CNN again. I never was. So
this isn't an act of war, I find ludicrous. And the notion that this isn't an act of war, I find ludicrous. This is a hot war. There are two nations, Israel and Iran, trading volleys of missiles every night, every day, and we're co-belligerent now in this war.
I mean, the vice president went on to say that they needed to act now because there was a narrow window. And if they waited, it could have been too late. And they needed to stop the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction.
Did he really just use that phrase? We need to stop the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. We're pulling out the WMD's card again. Like, you guys, are you not seeing this? It is the same shit again. And all right, so we've had this whole trying to manufacture consent for going to war with Iran for the last few months. You guys remember the New Jersey drone situation? Drones over New Jersey. You guys remember that? Then all of a sudden, some congressman came out on one of these news organizations and said, it's an Iranian mothership. They're launching drones off the coast. It's an Iranian mothership. Nobody bought it. No, nobody bought it. They're like, oh, fuck, that one didn't work. Then you had the Cybertruck bombing. You remember the Cybertruck bombing in front of the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas? And then the next day, this dude goes on Sean Ryan, and he talks about the bomber sent him a letter. And in this letter, they're talking about all sorts of crazy shit like anti-gravity and all sorts of crazy stuff like that. Well, I'm not it's calling anti-gravity crazy or whatever. That's not really the point. At the end of that podcast, the very end, like the last couple of minutes, when most people probably already stopped watching, and I didn't hear anybody talking about this, the dude that was on Sean Ryan's podcast just happens to slip in there. Oh, and by the way, Iran snuck a bunch of surface-to-air missiles over our porous border, and they now have them in the United States. And now you're hearing all this sleeper cell talk. They've been trying to get manufacturer consent for war with Iran for the last several months. I mean, actually the last several years. But the worst neocons in our government have been cheering for this for a long time. And now they're finally get the public on board. And now all of a sudden you hear the public all echoing the same freaking talking points. Iran cannot be allowed to have nuclear weapons. Okay, all of a sudden, because the same situation's been going on for years and you weren't saying shit. And now all of a sudden everybody's just parroting the same fucking phrase. And it's frustrating to me. It's extremely frustrating. It's this implanted idea in people's heads. You can't be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. That was what they said about North Korea. They got a nuclear weapon now and nobody says shit. Yeah, let's keep going.
You not share that concern?
No, I don't share that concern. But I have another concern, and that is that 3 bombings to neutralize Iran may turn out to be the 2025 version of 2 weeks to slow the spread. This could turn into a protracted, prolonged engagement, and I'm here to represent the base of the MAGA party that got Trump elected. Most of us were tired of the wars in the Middle East and Eastern Europe, and we were promised that we wouldn't be engaging in another one. Yet here we see this happening, and there's the president and the administration say, "Oh, we're done. We've had our little bombing, and now this is over." But what happens if this drags on between Israel and Tel Aviv gets pummeled by Iran? Is President Trump going to say we're going to sit by and not do anything in that instance? I'm leery of this given everything that's happened before.
Danger. I like Massie, but he has always hated Trump. I don't think he has. I think Trump's always hated Massie. I don't remember his outrage during Obama or Biden when they bombed. No, Massie's always been consistent on this. Look at how much he was speaking out against the funding of Ukraine. Massie's always been anti-war, and he always speaks out against this crap. I'm not with you on that one, man. I'm just not. I'm 100% pro Massie. All right, so this is sort of Trump's response to Thomas Massie, and it's a long one. And he used the capital letters, which means you're yelling. So Donald Trump says Congressman Thomas Massie of Kentucky is not MAGA. Okay, even though he likes to say he is, actually MAGA doesn't want him, doesn't know him, doesn't respect him. He is a negative force who almost always votes no matter how good something may be. He's like the big, beautiful bill, which has funding for Palantir to create a profile on every American in it. Lots of good stuff in that bill. Lots of stuff I support. But what happened to the no omnibus bills? What happened to single issue bills? What happened to that? Anyway, he is a negative force who always votes no matter how good something is. He's a simple-minded grandstander. Yeah, the MIT grad is simple-minded, who thinks it's good politics for Iran to have the highest level nuclear weapon, while at the same time yelling death to America at every chance they get. Yeah, he wants Iran to have a nuclear weapon. That's the point he's making. Iran has killed and maimed thousands. Iran has killed and maimed thousands of Americans and took over an American embassy in Tehran under the Carter administration. We had a spectacular military success yesterday, taking the bomb right out of their hands. Did they? They didn't have a bomb. They didn't have a bomb. And did you actually destroy their capabilities of making one? I don't think you did. And they would use it if they could. But as usual, and despite all the praise and accolades received, this lightweight congressman is against what was so brilliantly achieved last night in Iran. Massie is weak, ineffective, and votes no on virtually everything put before him. Rand Paul Jr., no matter how good something may be, he is disrespectful to our great military and what they stand for. Not even acknowledging that their brilliance and bravery in yesterday's attack, which is a total and complete win. Massie should drop his fake act and start putting America first. This is so frustrating. Oh, but he doesn't know how to get there. He doesn't have a clue. He'll undoubtedly vote against the great, big, beautiful bill, even though non-passage means 68% tax increases for everybody and many things far worse than that. MAGA should drop this pathetic loser, Tom Massie, like the plague. The good news is that we have a wonderful American patriot running against him in the Republican primary, and I'll be out in Kentucky campaigning really hard. MAGA is not about lazy, grandstanding, non-productive politicians of Thomas Massie, of which Thomas Massie is definitely one. Thank you to our incredible military for the amazing job they did last night. It was really special. Make America great again. I wonder who that Republican candidate is that's going to run against him in the primary. And you guys know? I wonder how much AIPAC support he's going to get. Interesting. Obama drones more people than Trump did. Yeah. Horrible, awful. And I'm sure Massie wasn't down with that either. Yeah, Obama. He was not critical of Obama at all. I find that hard to believe. I find that very hard to believe. I mean, I would have to look into it, but I find that very hard to believe that Massie wasn't critical of Obama bombing Yemen. All right, we'll keep going. So that's Trump reacting to Massie. So here's Donald Trump on the Ari Hoffman show. And this is just a post from Anomaly, and he says Trump wants Israel to literally own Congress and said they used to rightfully have more power over the U.S. Congress. He is mad at Thomas Massie isn't a foreign agent. So let's go over to this quick clip of Trump on the Ari Hoffman show.
Well, the biggest change I've seen in Congress is Israel literally owned Congress. You understand that 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And it was so powerful. And today it's almost the opposite. You have between AOC and Omar and these people that hate Israel. They hate it with a passion. They're controlling Congress, and Israel is not a force in Congress anymore. It's just amazing. I've never seen such a change. And we're not talking about over a very long period of time. But I think you know exactly what I'm saying. They had such power. Israel had such power, and rightfully, over Congress, and now it doesn't. It's incredible, actually.
Why is that? Why is that good? Why is it good that Israel would have extreme power over Congress? I'm failing to understand the point he's trying to make there. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what Iran is going to do in response to this. Maestro of Light, I'll send Massie some dough if AIPAC tries to primary him. Yeah, I'll have to send him a little tiny bit of money too. because and I believe you could do it right now. I guarantee, yeah, they're going to try to primary him for sure. The neocons and the war machine are definitely against Massie right now. So they're the Strait of Hormuz. Let's talk a little bit about the Strait of Hormuz, which is under Iran's control, and this is it. So all of the big oil producers, right? Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, they all need to have ships come out of the Persian Gulf right here. And then they go through this little choke point, the Strait of Hormuz, which is about 20 miles in diameter. And Iran's talking about shutting down the Strait of Hormuz, which we'll watch some videos on this of people that have way better perspective than I do. But this would hurt everybody if they did that. And it's sort of like a last-ditch effort of something that they would do. But I won't talk about it. Let's listen to people smarter than me talk about it. This is pretty well explained here. So let's go over to this chick, listen to her explain what would happen if Iran shut down the Strait of Hormuz.
The Strait of Hormuz is one of the most geopolitically charged waterways on the planet. Empires fought for it, now global markets depend on it, and at its narrowest point, it's only about 20 to 30 miles wide. Yet, 1/5 of the world's global oil supply flows through it daily. As you can see, there's Iran to the north, and there's the Musandam Peninsula to the south, which is a little exclave of Oman. It's quite tiny here on the map, but you have beady eyes, I've noticed, that juts out from UAE territory. So this narrow throat is the only maritime exit from the Persian Gulf, meaning that there's no other sea route for the vast energy exports of Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain. So it connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman, to the Arabian Sea, and then if the whiteboard was massive, the Indian Ocean. So it's linking Asia, the Middle East, and the global economy. As you might guess, this strait has been contested for millennia by the early Alamites of ancient Iran, the first Persian Empire under Cyrus the Great, Portuguese naval powers, the Ottomans, the Safavids. They all were seeking to control this vital trade artery between East and West. And today, Iran holds tactical control of this northern coast. And just days ago, a senior Iranian commander warned that Tehran was considering closing the strait in response to Israeli strikes. Iran correctly sees Hormuz as ultimate strategic leverage, not to strike Israel directly, but to pressure the global order. So if cornered by Israeli action or Western backing, it can threaten a blockade, which would cripple oil markets and punish Israel's allies. So it would force the US, Europe, and the Gulf states to make a choice: pressure Israel to back down, escalate militarily, or absorb the economic pain. So would Iran follow through on this? Well, it's an extreme scenario, and its feasibility is debated. Plus, closing this strait would hurt Iran's own exports. It would strain its ties with China, it would risk US escalation, but the threat of this alone was enough to shock markets, understandably as well, because it would send oil prices and inflation soaring. It would disrupt currencies and shipping lanes, and also the flow of food, medicine, and basic goods, which also come through here.
So there's people actually speculating that the U.S. wants them to shut down the Strait of Hormuz because it would actually hurt other countries more than it would hurt us. So, well, we'll get into that in a minute here. So this is just a graphic that shows how much traffic there is in this area, how much sea traffic that there is that goes through the Strait of Hormuz in the Persian Gulf here. It's a lot of boats, you guys. And right here, there's that tiny little choke point. So you can see there's just like one shipping lane that goes through. And I mean, it is a very busy area, and shutting it down wouldn't be that hard. These islands right here up at the top, I guess Iran controlled these islands as well, even though a couple of them are contested, I guess. But yeah, it would be fairly easy for them to shut this strait down, which, like she said, oil prices would skyrocket. So then out into the Indian Ocean. All right, you guys get the idea. Lots of boats going through there. All oil exports out of the Middle East going through the Strait of Hormuz. So this is somebody speculating that it'll actually hurt Europe and China more than it would hurt us. So it was from Suleiman Ahmed. If Iran blocks the Strait of Hormuz, it harms Europe and China, according to this video. So let's watch this.
US actually wants the Strait of Hormuz to be blocked. Sounds crazy, right? If Iran blocks the strait, who gets hurt the most? China and Europe. Let's start with Europe. Before the war in Ukraine, Europe relied heavily on cheap oil and gas from Russia. But after sanctions, it was forced to shift toward the US and the Middle East. Today, around 18% of Europe's oil and 15% of its LNG comes through the Strait of Hormuz. If the Strait of Hormuz is blocked, Europe is in trouble. No Russia, no Middle East. Only one option left for Europe is the USA. Now let's look at China. Nearly 50% of its oil and 12% of its LNG flows through the Strait of Hormuz. Yes, a blockade would hurt China, but China still has Russia, pipelines, land routes, and long-term deals. So ask yourself, if the Strait of Hormuz is blocked, who suffers more? China? Temporarily. Europe? Completely. That's exactly what the US wants. Because the day that strait is blocked, Europe won't just lose oil. It might lose its independence. It will be fully dependent on the USA.
I mean, it's an interesting theory, you know, and also if Europe becomes completely dependent on the USA, their prices skyrocket. They might start putting pressure on Iran to come to some sort of peace deal with America. So it's interesting theory that we actually want them to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. So not only do you have all of the worst people in government, worst neocons in government cheering to bomb Iran and probably want regime change. They probably want boots on the freaking ground. You've got all these influencers like Cat Turd, Laura Loomer, Gunther Engelman, all just going completely batshit on X. And I'll just give a few examples of this. Here's Laura Loomer, who, like, I agree with her on a lot of stuff, but she is just losing her shit about this one. So she writes here, Bill Clinton in 1995, we are determined to prevent Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. Okay. George Bush in 2006, Iran must not be allowed to develop nuclear weapons, period. Okay. Barack Obama in 2015, I have stated that Iran will never be allowed to obtain a nuclear weapon. Okay. Joe Biden in 2022, we will not allow Iran to acquire a nuclear weapon. Okay. Donald Trump, Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Promises made, promises kept. Again, I'll come back to what end. If our line in the sand is Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, how far are we willing to go? Would we be willing to start nuclear war over it? I'm not talking about with Iran. I'm talking about with another country that said, you know what? The U.S. has fucked around so much, we're going to give you guys a nuclear weapon. Say it's Russia or China. Would we be willing to go to nuclear war with Russia or China to stop Iran from having a nuclear weapon, which a lot of people are saying that they weren't even trying to develop. They were using it as a latent nuclear threat. And they're enriching uranium, which means the bomb that they would build would be like the ones that we dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which are like a pistol-style bomb, which can't be put on a warhead. They'd have to be dropped from an airplane. So it's not a threat to the United States at all. What the way they're enriching uranium at 60%, from my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. Danger Massie makes money from the Koch brothers. He is also a member of the Order of Demolay. Things are not as they seem. Okay. I go by what he says and what he has been super consistent on, and that's free speech, no war, not funding foreign countries, all of that stuff. And I mean, like, you know, keep going, like go down the Trump relationship with Epstein rabbit hole. I mean, everybody's got skeletons in their closet, but I mean, so he takes money from the Koch brothers. Okay. What has he done for the Koch brothers? So that would be the next question. What has he voted for? He always votes no. So what has he voted for that has benefited the Koch brothers? I'm not saying he hasn't, but, you know, find that next. We'll keep going. Go over to Gunther Engelman. So he posts this, which is funny. So this is a meme that he posted. It says endless war, the endless wars, and then the surgical strikes that goes through the guy's face shield, right? Because we're not going to have endless wars. Oh, well, it went from surgical strikes to Trump posting this on True Social. It's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change? MAGA, he says. He unironically said MAGA, because we always joke and say make Israel great again, but this time he's saying Iran. So it seems that Trump is now promoting regime change in Iran, which you can't do a regime change in a country as large as Iran, with leaders that have been in control for the last 40 years through CIA, color revolution, psyops. You're not going to be able to do it. So what would a regime change mean in Iran? Boots on the ground. What is Benjamin Netanyahu's ultimate goal for Iran? Regime change. These strikes, I don't think they're about taking out the nuclear facilities at all, because I don't think they took out their nuclear capabilities. I don't think they did that at all. I don't even think they set them back. If anything, I think they sped it up. So if it's not about that, what would it be about? Bombing their nuclear facilities, America, and then having Iran respond in kind, and then we respond, and then all of a sudden, hey, now we got to push for a regime change in Iran. This, to me, seems like the Israeli government trying to get America to fight another one of their wars. That's what it seems like to me. Tell me if I'm wrong there. Then here's Cat Turd. He takes that post that Trump said, it's not politically correct to use the term regime change, and he says, Cat Turd says, we call it a little trolling. Right, okay. The president of the United States is just trolling Iran. Okay, he's not actually calling for regime change. Apparently, I guess. All right, we'll keep going here. This from Fox News. President Real Donald Trump. Oh, let me share this. President Real Donald Trump's regime change comment tracks with what he said before. Fox News' Brett Baer says, I don't think he's pushing for the U.S. to be the impetus of regime change. All right, let's listen to what Brett Baer has to say here.
President Trump saying this: it's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, in caps, why wouldn't there be a regime change? And then he says MAGA, M-I-G-A, with exclamation points. Your thoughts on that development this afternoon?
I think it tracks with what he said before. I don't think he's pushing for the U.S. to be the impetus of a regime change. However, he's noting that the Iranian leadership is probably feeling the pinch, and they likely will face some pushback from people on the ground. Remember, it's a very young country. I was in the room in Saudi Arabia when the president gave this speech, talking about the Middle East, saying he was going to be different. It was not going to be that the U.S., that they wanted every country to be a mirror image of the U.S., a republic, a democracy. It didn't have to be. We want you to be who you want to be, essentially, in paraphrasing here, but we want to do deals with you, and we want to make, the Middle East great again. So I think he's signaling that, to much like Bibi Netanyahu has said that the Iranian people should rise up. It doesn't mean that we have boots on the ground or that the operation's expanding. I think it's Truth Social at the president's best.
Doesn't mean boots on the ground. Okay, we'll see about that. I'm skeptical. Danger. I don't think the U.S. is worried about Iran dropping a bomb from the sky, because they don't need to be, because the bomb would just be too big. They don't have the capability to get it here. You're worried about nuclear-sized bombs or suitcase-sized bombs. Well, they're so far away from that. And if they're so far of making that on their own, that would have to be something they acquired from another country. And there's all this talk about the sleeper cells. There's tons of talk now about the sleeper cells that are going to be activated in America. And leading up to before these strikes on the nuclear facilities, a lot of us are talking about wait for the false flag to get us to go to war with Iran. Wait for it. Wait for it. Now, after striking Iran, we have, I just said that the CIA and Mossad are frothing at the mouth right now because they have the perfect opportunity to do something terrible on American soil and then blame it on Iran. So that's kind of what I'm worried about with all the sleeper cell talk from the usual suspects. I'm not saying there's not sleeper cells, and I'm not saying that Iran doesn't want to harm America, but they are set up perfectly to blame something on an Iranian sleeper cell. So if something happens on American soil and it's blamed on an Iranian sleeper cell, I am going to need the most irrefutable evidence to say, yeah, that was actually Iran, because we are completely set up for that type of scenario right now. Danger, they likely already have the equipment. They just need the uranium. Okay. All right. Maybe. I don't know. So again, the most horrible people in government, here's Mike Pompeo. He says, there's still work to do to fully eradicate every remnant of the Iranian nuclear program. Oh, really? Because it seemed like everybody was saying, including Dave Rubin, that this was a one and done operation. Drop some bombs, we're in and out, nuclear capabilities, done. That's what it seemed like they were saying last night. Now there's still more work to do, apparently. Let's see what horrible ass Mike Pompeo, who tried to assassinate Julian Assange, had to say about this.
I think this is going to be something that the U.S. intelligence community and the Israeli intelligence community have to work their way through to figure out what they did to disperse not only those cylinders that held the highly enriched uranium, but their intellectual capital as well, that human capital that drives their program forward, and the components of their ballistic missile system. They'll try to hide them and scatter them. I think that's something that we'll have to stay after. I suspect that in spite of the real success last night, there'll still be work to do to fully eradicate every remnant of their nuclear program. But I think we shouldn't forget that it's a massive setback from what President Trump did last night. The change in the nature of the Iranian capability to launch or build a nuclear weapon is now enormously diminished as a result of what the Israelis have done over the last 9 days and what the United States of America did that it only could do last night.
If you say so, Mike. Let's keep going. There's another clip from Mike Pompeo. He says here, there's no doubt that the Iranian regime could be preparing to activate terrorist cells in the U.S. But make no mistake, if they take this course, President Trump will make sure they regret it. Seems like he's setting up the scenario right there. They're going to activate terrorist cells. You guys, if something happens in the next couple of weeks, months, and they blame it on Iranian terrorist cells, I mean, I'm not talking about like a little, like the dude that drove the truck into the church today and opened fire on people. And I'm not trying to downplay that. That was horrible. I'm not talking about like some mass shooting or somebody driving over a bunch of people in cars. I'm talking about like a dirty bomb detonated in a major U.S. city or something big, like close to 9/11 size, something like that happening, and then being blamed on Iran. Because, I mean, look at the support for war. After 9/11, I'm sure most of you guys are old enough to remember 9/11. After 9/11, I was frothing at the mouth. I just wanted to see our government bomb the shit out of somebody. I was so pissed. And that's the sort of sentiment they want. That's the manufacturing consent that they want. They want the American public to be frothing at the mouth for war. And this seems like what they're trying to set up here to me. So just please, you guys, if something happens in the next few weeks or months and it's huge, horrific, and it's blamed on Iran, just wait and make sure they give you irrefutable proof, not a passport that's landed on the ground and charred a little bit. Just wait for that. Let's see what Mike Pompeo had to say here. Northside, what up, man? Nice to see you.
I've been talking about this risk for 4 years. It's probably even slightly heightened now. There's no doubt the Iranian regime has tried to put active agents on the ground in Europe and Brussels and Paris and London, and indeed here in the United States. And you're absolutely right. We've had a wide open border. We know that at least a couple of hundred folks who were already on the American terror designated watch list who came across the border during the Biden administration. So that risk is not zero. It could be that that'll be a method by which the Iranians will choose to try and take vengeance and respond and to deter the United States. I'm counting on our FBI and local law enforcement to help keep all of us safe, including those who have been threatened directly by the regime itself. But more importantly than that, I think the Iranians' calculus has to be very careful here. They have to understand that while we spared the political leadership and energy infrastructure targets last night, there's no guarantee that that will continue if they come after an American, whether that's one of our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines abroad, or someone here in the United States.
Yeah. So did he just try to say that they would use like a terrorist sleeper cell in America to deter the United States? Does that make any sense to you guys whatsoever? Does he think Iranian leadership would be so dumb to think that, yeah, if we just activate a terrorist cell and we commit a horrific act of terrorism on American soil, that'll deter them? They absolutely know that we would respond with completely disproportionate. We'd have a completely different disproportionate response. We'd bomb the hell out of them and we'd have no mercy. So, like, what is he trying to imply there? That Iran just thinks they could use a terrorist cell as a deterrent? That makes no sense to me whatsoever. All right, let's go over to Iran and what they say they're going to do in response. So this is the Iranian president speaking. It's from Mario Narfel says, Iran threatens U.S. strike under self-defense clause, calling the U.S. strike on its nuclear facilities brutal military aggression. Iran's FM Abbas Araghchi said retaliation is now on the table. We reserve the right to strike the U.S. under the UN's Charter self-defense clause. U.S. President Trump has betrayed not only Iran, but also deceived his nation. Okay, let's see what Iran has to say about this whole situation.
The Islamic Republic of Iran condemns in the strongest terms the United States' brutal military aggression against Iran's peaceful nuclear facilities. It is an outrageous, grave, and unprecedented violation of the fundamental principles of the Charter of the United Nations and international law. The warmongering and lawless administration in Washington is solely and fully responsible for the dangerous consequences and far-reaching implications of its act of aggression. The U.S. military attack on the territorial integrity and national sovereignty of a UN member state carried out with genocidal Israeli regime, carried out in collusion with the genocidal Israeli regime, has once again revealed the extent of the United States' hostility towards the peace-seeking people of Iran, who will never compromise over their independence and sovereignty. The Islamic Republic of Iran continue to defend Iran's territory, sovereignty, security, and people by all means necessary against not just US military aggression, but also the reckless and unlawful actions of the Israeli regime. While President Trump was elected on a platform of putting an end to America's costly involvement of forever wars in our part of the world, he has betrayed not only Iran by abusing our commitment to diplomacy, but also deceived his own voters by submitting to the wishes of a wanted war criminal who has grown accustomed to exploiting the lives and wealth of American citizens to further the Israeli regime's objectives. The US act of aggression against Iran's peaceful nuclear facilities constitutes not only a flagrant breach of the UN Charter, especially the prohibition of the use of force under Article 2, Paragraph 4, and the obligation to respect the state's territorial integrity and sovereignty, but also a violation of UN Security Council Resolution 2231. It cannot be emphasized enough how much of a devastating blow that the US, a permanent member of the Security Council, has dealt to the global non-proliferation regime. The Islamic Republic of Iran reminds the United Nations, the Security Council, the UN Secretary General, the International Atomic Energy, the International Atomic Energy Agency and other relevant international bodies of their duty and responsibility to take urgent and decisive action in response to this breach of international law. Silence in the face of such blatant aggression will plunge the world into an unprecedented level of danger and chaos. Humanity has come too far as a species to allow a lawless bully to take us back to the law of the jungle. The Islamic Republic of Iran calls on the Security Council to convene an emergency session to unequivocally condemn the criminal act of aggression by the United States against Iran and to hold the administration in Washington accountable for its violations of fundamental principles of United Nations Charter and of norms of international law. The responsibility of the IAEA and its Director General, who through evidence bias in favor of warmongering parties paved the way for the current violence and bloodshed, is now clearer than ever. We call on the IAEA Board of Governors to immediately convene and carry out its legal responsibility in response to the dangerous US attack on Iran's peaceful nuclear facilities, all of which have been under the agency's full safeguards and monitoring.
So that's the thing, is they've been allowing inspections. They've not broken any of the rules set forth by this administration. Again, only enriching uranium up to 60%. At the same time, in contrast, Israel doesn't even admit that they have nuclear weapons, even though everybody knows that they do. And the way they obtained their nuclear weapons manufacturing capabilities is they literally stole it from us. And we're just completely okay with it. It's sort of ironic to me.
The world must not forget that it was the United States which, in the midst of a process to forge a diplomatic outcome, betrayed diplomacy by supporting the genocidal Israeli regime's launch of an illegal war of aggression on the Iranian nation. Not content with such malign actions, the United States itself has now also opted for a dangerous military operation and aggression against the people of Iran. In doing so, the US administration holds sole and full responsibility for the consequences of its actions, including the Islamic Republic of Iran's right to self-defense under the principles of the United Charter. In accordance with the UN Charter and its provisions allowing a legitimate response in self-defense, Iran reserves all options to defend its security interests and people. Thank you very much.
What do you guys think they're going to do in response? There's 19 bases within American bases within striking distance of Iran. You think they're going to hit those bases? Do you think they're going to activate terrorist cells? What do you think they're going to do? I'm curious, because they are going to respond somehow. They have to. A lot of people are saying they're not going to do shit. They got bitch slapped and they're not going to do shit. I don't believe that. This has been escalated to a level that it hasn't been escalated to in my lifetime. So I don't think they're just going to sit back and take this stuff. I'm not sure. Maestro of Light, Russia and North Korea said they'll supply Iran with nukes. That's from Alex Jones. I'm skeptical of the Russia thing because Putin was on some panel and he got asked about that. And he says there's a lot of Russian speaking and Russian people in Israel. So he takes that into account when he considers supporting Iran with attacks against Israel. So I'm a little skeptical of that. But North Korea, again, the country that we used to say North Korea cannot be allowed to have nuclear weapons, and then they have nuclear weapons now, and now we don't say shit about that. They're willing to provide Iran with nuclear weapons. It's not a shocker. But I don't, again, yeah, we'll see. I saw Alex Jones said that too, but I wonder where he's getting that from. I should look into it. So another one of the horrible neocon warmongers that's been going viral, talking about all this stuff, is Mark Levin. And, you know, he's been going to war with Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and many others. He says, breaking, from the New York Times, the U.S. has obtained intelligence indicating that Iran-backed militias are planning attacks on American military bases in Iraq and Syria in retaliation for U.S. strikes on Iran. The report highlights growing concerns within the Pentagon that proxy forces may attempt to open new fronts against the U.S. assets in the region. Washington is now bracing for asymmetric retaliation. Yeah, they're going to do something. Danger. There are many reports saying that Iran has not been complying with inspections. Reports from who? Because that's not what Tulsi Gabbard said. Tulsi Gabbard saying that they are completely within compliance of that. Has Israel been compliant with inspections at all? Have about their nuclear facilities? Or are they just not even saying they have them? I'm just curious. Who's more cooperative with these inspections, Israel or Iran? Just saying. That's not a whataboutism either. It's just really talking about how Israel has nuclear weapons and they just won't admit to having them, and they won't abide by these rules created by this committee. This is from Colin Rugg. He says, new, Iran threatened to unleash attacks by sleeper cells inside the United States if attacked, according to NBC News. According to the outlet, the message was sent through an intermediary to President Trump at the G7 summit in Canada. He's just quoting the video, so we'll just watch this here.
Can you assess that issue particularly? How many Iranians are in the country that are in sleeper cells trying to do bad to America right now?
Well, look, you and I have talked about this many times. I said the last 4 years, my biggest concern was this open border was the biggest national security vulnerability this country's ever seen. So I pulled numbers this morning just from a CBP under Joe Biden. There was 1,272 nationals of Iran released in the country between OFO and the Border Patrol.
I just want to remind you guys, again, on the Sean Ryan show, right after the Cybertruck bombing at the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas, at the end of the show, they said, by the way, Iran has snuck surface-to-air missiles into the United States, planting that seed. So let's see what Tom Homan has to say.
And you compare that to the Trump administration, zero. Right, zero releases. And right now, because of President Trump's leadership, we have the most secure border in my lifetime, most secure border in the history of this nation. So we have a secure border. That was President Trump's big win on securing this nation. So we're not releasing people in this country, especially interest aliens aren't crossing that border undetected. But under Joe Biden, we had over 10 million people cross that border. But my biggest concern from day one, beyond the fentanyl, beyond the sex trafficking women and children, were the 2 million known gotaways. Over 2 million people crossed that border. We don't know who they are, where they came from, because they got away, because Border Patrol is so overwhelmed with the humanitarian crisis that Biden created that over 2 million people crossed the border and got away. That is my biggest concern, and that's what created the biggest national security vulnerability this country's ever seen.
Can you assess?
Yeah, so, I mean, securing the border, that to me is like the biggest Trump win that he's had so far since he's gotten into office. And, you know, I will give that to him. He has definitely secured the border. Still hasn't deported as many people as Obama, but people are freaking out about that. So anyway, just kind of interesting. So let's go over to this is the representative for the State Department, Tammy Bruce. And just listen to what she says on this show, the rundown here. And like, does anything jump out to you? Dangerous Tillman, the IAEA has reported since 2021, Iran has been limiting the amount of inspections in the country and won't allow short notice inspections. Okay. All right. I mean, all right. Like, I don't, there's still no hard proof that Iran was trying to create a nuclear weapon. And I'm not saying that they weren't. It sort of goes back to my other point. And I'm basically saying, what length are we willing to go to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon? Goes back to Muammar Gaddafi. I mean, it goes back to Ukraine. When Ukraine gave up their nuclear weapons, does it really serve a nation to give up having a nuclear weapon or seeking a nuclear weapon? Does it serve their best interests? And I'm not proposing that Iran should have a nuclear weapon. I don't support the Iranian regime in any way, shape, or form. But if you're Iran, do you think now, after these strikes, are you more or less likely to pursue a nuclear deterrent? I would think that they would be more likely to pursue a nuclear deterrent than they were before. And I mean, if I was Iran, I would be seeking a nuclear deterrent. Look what happened to Muammar Gaddafi. Look what happened to Ukraine. Ukraine probably should have held on to the nuclear weapons. Anyway, Tammy Bruce on the rundown here says something very interesting. Tell me if you guys notice anything.
The pride of being able to be here and do work that facilitates making things better for people, and in the greatest country on earth, next to Israel.
What was that? What did you just say about America being the greatest country on earth?
To Israel. It is the greatest country on earth, next to Israel.
This woman works for the United States State Department and says we are the second greatest country on earth, next to Israel. Okay, that's insane to me.
It is. It's an honor to be able to make a difference and to be able to speak in this regard with an administration that I love so much and that I feel genuinely represented by. It's a real honor.
Is she talking about the Likud party, or is she talking about the Trump administration? Because of what she just said, I'm unsure. Oh boy. All right, let's. I can't believe this, but I saw a video last night of Bill Clinton actually making sense, and I was shocked. I was completely shocked. So let's listen to what Bill Clinton has to say about this whole situation, because it's fairly interesting.
Mr. Netanyahu has long wanted to fight Iran because that way he can stay in office forever and ever. I mean, he's been there most of the last 20 years. But
so remember, before October 7th, there were protests in the streets to get Netanyahu out of power. He was not popular. After October 7th, that changed a lot. Look at the support for George Bush after 9/11. Very similar. Wartime presidents do really well after they are at war. They get a lot more support. Really weird timing.
I think we should be trying to diffuse it. And I hope President Trump will do that. I hope anybody there will do that. We've got to stop. We got to convince our friends in the Middle East that we'll stand with them and try to protect them. But choosing undeclared wars in which the primary victims are civilians who are not politically involved one way or the other, just want to live decent lives, is not a very good solution. Do I think that we have to try to stop Iran from having a nuclear weapon? I do. I tried at that, and we had some success. But we don't have to have all this outright constant killing of civilians who can't defend themselves and they just want a chance to live.
I can't believe I'm agreeing with something Bill Clinton had to say. Not only agreeing, but saying he sounds very wise in that statement that he just made. It's incredible. Very incredible. So yeah, last thing I have for tonight is just this meme that sort of pretty much sums up how this Trump administration 2.0 has gone. So this is back in 2013. Trump says, "Be prepared. There is a small chance that our horrendous leadership could unknowingly lead us into World War III." Then in 2019, he says, "The United States has spent $8 trillion fighting and policing in the Middle East. Thousands of our great soldiers have died or been badly wounded. Millions of people have died on the wrong side. Going into the Middle East is the worst decision ever made." Then on November 6th, Trump pledges no wars during his presidency. That was in November of 2024. And then last night, We have completed our very successful attack on 3 nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Wow, it's amazing how he's changed his approach there. It's really quite amazing. North side makes sense that Israel is the greatest country. We clearly are not in charge. I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you at all. Rumac, nice to see you. Thanks for joining. I was the biggest Trump supporter until last night. Disgusted that he is controlled by Israel as well. Yeah, man. Going into this, I knew that Miriam Adelson was contributing a lot of money to his campaign. I knew that he was hardcore, portraying himself as a hardcore Zionist. But I had this dumb, stupid idea in my mind that he's playing them, like he's playing Israel. He's going to get their support, and he's going to get in there, and then he's going to say, no, we're cutting you off. We're not going to fund your wars. We're not going to fund your genocide on Gaza. And yes, I do believe it's a genocide that is taking place. And we're not going to do Israel's bidding anymore. I was hoping that for some dumb reason. I thought that might actually happen. I thought he might be playing them. I was wrong. I was wrong. I'm not saying Kamala would be better, but last night I might have come to the conclusion that I am not going to vote for a president again, because we always get the same result. No matter who wins, we get the same result when it comes to this crap. Forever wars and endless military funding and trying to police the Middle East, creating blowback, more countries that want to scream death to America, because, we haven't exactly been nice to the Middle East in the last 30 years. So, yeah, it's frustrating. Danger, this could be compared to Clinton's Kosovo situation. Yeah, after time, we'll see what happens. Yeah, like that. Yeah, it could be. Rumac, I hoped he wasn't, but not all are surprised. Yeah, I'm not at all surprised. Yeah, I think that's exactly what I was just saying there. I was hoping, yeah, but you're right. I'm not surprised either. Rumac, I was also wrong. Ramaswamy might have been a better choice. No, I trust Ramaswamy even more. I don't trust Vivek at all. I've never trusted Vivek for some reason. Did he even have actual evidence of enriched uranium? No, he didn't. Danger, I don't think Trump is owned by Israel. Why? Like, look at it. Look at everything that's happening now. I think he's being not only owned, but played by Israel. I don't think there's any evidence to support that he isn't owned by Israel. Look at everything that's happening. I don't trust any of them, really. Yeah, me neither. This virtually everything other than securing the border has been disappointing about this administration. No Epstein files. We haven't found anything else about Thomas Crooks. The mass deportations, a lot of people are complaining about that it's not ramped up to the number that they would like to see. Being a libertarian, I'm not even in huge support of mass deportations. I would rather see them go against the sanctuary state policies that are incentivizing people to come here and getting people to self-deport. I actually think that would be more effective, but you guys have heard me talk about that plenty of times. Yeah, all sorts of stuff. Ending the war in Ukraine, like he said he was going to do, didn't happen. Ending the war in Gaza, like he said he was going to do, didn't happen. Yeah, I'm incredibly disappointed with this Trump administration, personally. Yeah, and last night was sort of I feel like it's going to get worse. I don't know. That's just me. I feel like there's going to be a response from Iran. We're going to respond to that, and it's ultimately going to end up with regime change and United States boots on the ground. I hope I'm wrong about all of this, and you guys are calling me an idiot and a panicking. I hope that's the situation. I really do. I really hope that I'm wrong and I look like an asshole and I'm being completely paranoid right now. I hope that's what ends up happening, but I don't think it is. I don't think that is what's going to end up happening. Danger, Epstein files and Trump assassination is out of his control. You can show proof when all of it was destroyed before he took office. Then why did Pam Bondi say she's got all of it sitting on her desk? And videos. And what Cash Patel or Dan Bongino saying we got video of the night that Epstein supposedly killed himself. Remember, he said that. We haven't seen any of that. I don't think it is out of his control. I think there's some dirt on him personally about the Epstein stuff. Read One Nation Under Blackmail, man. Like, I really think this might change your perspective on a lot of this stuff. Like, yeah, I'm not down with the vast majority of stuff that's taken place so far in this administration. So that is my 2 cents on it. I've lost a lot of followers over the last night regarding my stance on all of this stuff. You're not real MAGA. Never really claimed to be. I do want to make America great again, but apparently I'm not in the club because I'm not a neocon warmonger, and I am criticizing Trump. So if you criticize Israel, you're an anti-Semite. If you criticize Trump, you're not MAGA. Guess that's the way the cookie crumbles. So be it. That's fine. Libertarians say I'm not a real libertarian. The libtards say that I'm maggot. MAGA says I'm a libtard. So I guess I'm not on anybody's team. That's just the way it goes. So be it. I'm fine with it. I'm still going to enjoy my life. Rimac, Israel has the dirt on Trump, is my only reasoning. Northside, we are MAGA, not MIGA. Yeah, MIGA, please. Fuck those assholes that unfollowed you. You are allowed to disagree. Thank you, Danger. Because I know you and I, if you guys don't know, Danger and I are actually very close friends in real life. He is one of my best friends. And we disagree on this topic. We've never once gotten in like a heated argument about it. We talk about it like normal, rational human beings, and that's the way it should be. And I don't care if we completely disagreed on this. Lonnie will be my friend till the day I die. I don't care what happens, even though we've had a few spats in the past. But yeah, don't allow politics to come between friendship, guys. It's not worth it. Northside, 100% Rimac. Yep, it's yeah, in my opinion, it's been a bit of a shit show. But I'm going to end it there. I think that's all I got for tonight, you guys. But before we get out of here, you know how we do it. We got to tell a joke from the greatest book ever written, The Truth About Chuck Norris. Northside, Danger, Rumac. Who else we got in here? Terry Wallace, saw you in here earlier. Wally World, Maestro of Light. And Red Hen. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. I really appreciate all of you being here. Repost the episode, leave a comment. Bob Tiergarden, didn't mean to miss you. Yeah, all you guys, thank you so much for hanging out. And here is our Chuck Norris joke of the evening. Okay, so when Chuck Norris's wife burned the turkey one Thanksgiving, Chuck said, "Don't worry about it, honey," and went into his backyard. He came back 5 minutes later with a live turkey and ate it whole. And when he threw it up a few seconds later, it was fully cooked and came with cranberry sauce. When his wife asked him how he'd done it, he gave her a roundhouse kick to the face and said, "Never ask Chuck Norris questions." On that note, stay CaliBased.